If, like me, you're still wincing from the crash and the crunch of the CRT that arrived in our Packard Bell restoration recently, there it is, what a painful moment that is, then you'll be pleased to see what is on the desk today. I have one objective and one objective only today, that's to come away with a working monitor for our Packard Bell restoration out of the parts that we've got here. And if you haven't been watching the series, then all the links are below to go from the beginning and get up to this point, including that horrible crunching CRT moment. So what have we got on the table here? Well, believe it or not, this one here is that monitor that's smashed. Now, a lot of you left a comment on the last video because I said a slightly silly thing, which was this monitor was well packed. And I think what I meant when I said it was well packed was it had a lot of packing material in there. It wasn't necessarily packed in the right way, otherwise it wouldn't have smashed. So you were entirely right to make that comment. However, there are some good things about this. It hasn't necked, surprisingly. What we mean by that is the neck of the monitor here hasn't snapped in the process of being thrown around in the box, so that's good. And it looks pretty tidy. There's no cracks on the PCB. There's no reason really that I can see not to test it. So we're going to test that out today and see if we can at least salvage something. Over here we've got two monitors. We've got this one was donated by volunteer Alan, who helps out at weekends here at the cave. He found it in, I think it was in his parents' loft he found it. And as you can see, it's untested. Externally, the condition isn't bad. They all seem to yellow in different places in different ways. So cosmetically, we're going to try and cobble something together, including from the box of smashed parts, if we can salvage anything from that, to get as original colour looking one as possible. So that's Alan's monitor. Thank you very much, Alan. And then over here, this one that's rolling around on the desk because it's missing its monitor stand. This one comes from Pillock, long-time viewer, admin and supporter of the channel. Thank you, Pillock, who came to the last patron day and dropped this off. And once again, it's yellowed. It's yellowed in weird places, such as this speaker. Why has one speaker yellowed massively compared to the other speaker? The mysteries of plastic yellowing will never be clear to me, but it's another monitor that we can work with. So I think first things first, let's test them all. Let's see if we get any kind of image on them and see what we're working with and what parts we've got to cobble together something as close to perfect as possible. And we'll also need to do a lot of cleaning by the looks of it. Let's do some testing. We'd like to thank PCBWay.com for supporting our episode today. They aren't just about PCBs, although they do a tremendous job of that. They also offer CNC machining, sheet metal fabrication, 3D printing and injection moulding. If you're creating, then PCBWay.com can help you bring your project to life. Get an instant quote now over at PCBWay.com, and we thank them for their support. Let's start then with the internals from that broken monitor. I'm going to put a regular 31 kHz signal into these monitors using a Mr. Multi-System as my source for our testing. Quite how this survived without damage, I don't know. There's not even a scratch on the front of the screen. It's quite astonishing. Anyway, the moment of truth. Let's switch it on. And this does seem to be working. There's a test image that comes up on the screen, quite unbelievable. And if I twiddle some knobs, I can adjust the image position, the dimensions, the brightness, the contrast, all of those are working. There's one pot that's a little bit janky when I turn it, but otherwise it's a completely good working monitor, minus a case. Let's turn the multi-system on now and see what a game looks like through it. This is the Bombjack Arcade Core, which is a vertically oriented game, as the monitor's on its side. Any flickering that you can see on the screen is just my camera not quite locking onto the screen. That's not visible to my eyes here. And what really struck me about this is the quality of the image. It was astonishingly good, and I don't think I've seen Bombjack look this good before. And that was a surprise because Packard Bell, it's just not a brand that you associate with high quality products. It's not necessarily a terrible brand, but I think we can all admit that it's budget to mid-range at best. You'll remember the seller of this was kind enough to offer a refund in the last episode as it arrived smashed up, and I have gone back to him and offered to pay him back for any parts that I'm now able to salvage. So we have some working innards, but that's only useful for my goal if the others don't work and this fits in the case of another so we can actually use it. Before moving on, we'll discharge it with my slightly janky discharge tool. Please do of course be aware of the risks of working on CRTs if you're considering opening one up. Seek advice of someone experienced in them to help you. Don't do what I do. Let's see what else I've got to work with. Monitor 2, salvaged from Alan's parents with those off-yellow spots around the bezel. I wonder what caused them. Let's power it on, and nothing's happening here apart from a green light. There's no sign of a picture, no amount of fiddling with the dials causes even so much as a flicker. So this one's not looking quite so promising. There's some rust forming on the speakers, on the right hand side especially, you can see that there. And I did notice when I looked at the VGA cable, here it is, there's some rust on the connector there too. Now I'm not Chief Inspector Barnaby, but I'd guess this monitor has been stored in less than ideal conditions, and we will open it up in a moment just to see how the inside's looking. Let's look at monitor 3 now. I purchased this on eBay and my good friend Pillock, who was coming to the cave, offered to pick it up so that we would avoid a repeat of that same smash delivery we saw before. And this one is working. It's firing up the Silkworm arcade core here. Again, I used to play a lot in the arcades and on my Amiga back in the day. And on this monitor too, the image is absolutely fantastic. What a great little monitor. So on our first pass of testing, we've got 2 working monitors out of 3, one with a case, one without, and with a bit of work I'm hoping we'll end up at least with 1 good complete monitor, maybe even 2. The next job then was to strip them down, clean them and hopefully put them back together. We'll just remove the speakers there. I actually like the monitor mounted speakers on this monitor. I've got plenty of memories of speakers and wires cluttering up my desk and just getting in the way, so monitor ears are always a nice addition. Although I wouldn't expect them to satisfy an audiophile, they will meet most people's needs. Here we are, I've opened up Alan's non-working monitor here, and the signs of moist storage conditions continue. We can see rusty metal around the tube socket in the middle there, as well as the power connector, that's looking a little bit rusty there as well. And the board itself is grubby with signs of mould on it. That's not to say it can't be saved, and I won't be binning it, don't worry about that. The repair lab guys downstairs have asked if they can have a look at it, so if progress is made, I'll certainly share that with you in the future. And I'd wager that the tube is absolutely fine. But let's strip it all out anyway so that we can give the casing a clean. Out it comes, and that's our first monitor case stripped for cleaning. Don't drop the tube, Neil. There we go, that's clear and ready to go. Now, let's open up the other one. In here it's a much cleaner story. There's no rust or mould. I did notice the plastic on the base is very brittle, and we did see some examples of that very brittle plastic in the smashed up one when we picked through the pieces in the last episode. Some bits just fall apart here when you touch it. It's also very yellow. It's funny how the top of the casing is white and solid, but this part is the exact opposite. And that extends too to the power button, which when removed, well, you can see the clips just crumble like the whole thing's made out of custard creams. Thankfully, in the box of smashed up parts, we do have a spare power button, so hopefully we can replace that. But the base of the smashed up monitor was also damaged, so we don't have that as a spare to swap out. And given the condition of this one, it's probably best not messed with. I'll just leave that in place, and I don't think anyone will see it anyway. It's on the underside of the monitor. Let's just not risk damaging that any further. The speakers are fairly easy to deconstruct, just a couple of screws in each one. And we do have spare parts for these from the smashed up monitor, so we could sort out the speaker grills or maybe just replace the speakers entirely. The grills there are held in place by metal tabs, so they're easily removed if you need to work on them. And inside you can see it's just a single speaker in there. There's no separate tweeter or anything fancy like that, although the height of them would suggest there's room to put something in there, just the single speaker in there. And there is a deconstructed monitor case for cleaning. Aside from brittle plastics, it's really not a complex thing to take apart, so let's get the soapy suds out and give our Packard Bell a good old scrub. The car shampoo did its job today, no need for anything more abrasive to clean these parts, and I did use a brush to get into the harder to reach parts. I thought they didn't look too bad at the start, but the state of the water tells a different story. The plastics are nice and clean, and I wanted to tackle the yellowing next on this bezel. It's almost like something's been sat on top of it, because there are no corresponding mounting points or anything like that on the rear of the plastics where it has yellowed. I guess there was just something resting on top which has caused the plastic to react in this way over a period of time. To tackle this, I went for the Retrobrighting technique, as we nicknamed it when we first used it on the Amiga 1000, and I left it in the potting shed with some hydrogen peroxide in the base. This is very lazy Retrobrighting. I left it in there for a few days. We're using a 12% concentration, which is the strongest I can easily get hold of in any quantity here. And then we just leave the lid on the box and let the fumes do the rest of the work. And then it was time to put everything back together, and I can show you what we were left with after all that work. And here we are a few days after Retrobrighting. How has it all gone? Was it all worth the effort? Well, we've got some good news over here, and we'll come on to that in just a second. I'm going to start with the less good news. So this is the bezel that was Retrobrighted, and if you just have a close look at it here, you can see that the Retrobrighting, or the Retrobrighting technique that I used, actually was very effective. The yellow circles have almost, but not quite completely disappeared. But I would have been completely satisfied with that considering what we started with. However, it's sat on its face here and I haven't been able to put it together. Why? Well, it turns out that the monitors that we have are all slightly different. I've got the backs of the other two over here. So despite looking identical from the outside, we've got a 1994 one, which is labelled as modelled 1412 SL. We've got a 1996 one, 1015, and over here 1997, also labelled as 1015. But everyone is slightly different on the inside, which means the working tube that we got from the smashed up monitor won't actually fit. The dials on the front won't line up with the holes on the front. And the most important part, which is the base, you just can't get the PCB for the monitor here to slide onto the base and to sit onto the base properly so that you can screw it all together securely and put it all back together. Fits perfectly on the old one, of course, the old base, but that's smashed to pieces. There's no way we can use that whatsoever. So it's a real shame, because I know we've got a perfectly good working monitor or tube with a really good picture on it. So we haven't quite ended up with the two working monitors that I'd hoped for. So there are two things that we could do with this. One is the guys in the lab downstairs are going to have a look at the non-working PCB and tube, that rusty one. Maybe they can get that working and then it can all go back into the original case. Or if anybody out there has a non-working Packard Bell 1412 SL and just needs the innards and is local and is able to come and collect this, just drop me a message, because I'd rather this went into a case and got somebody up and running and helped somebody in the way other people have helped me to get this one up and running. Just drop me a message and we can sort that out. Okay, let's focus on the good now. So over here you can see I have, this is the monitor that was the wobbly monitor. So I've added a base to it from our box of parts from our smashed up monitor, and that works beautifully. The speakers on the smashed up monitor were in really lovely condition, so I've not had to respray anything. I've just transplanted those onto here, and I think that looks nice. And as you can hear, that is working. So if we compare this now to the magazine that we saw in episode 1, and we just review where we're trying to get this restoration to, I'm pretty happy that we've now matched the monitor. Once we've got the PC put back together, retrobrighted, cleaned up in the next episode, I think this will sit very nicely on top of it and we can get really close to that original magazine image, which we're trying to do. The monitor's not completely perfect. There is this scratch on the front here, and I will try and buff that out, but I don't think there's a great deal I can do about that. It's one of those things where the harder I try, the worse it may well make it. So I'll probably just leave it like that. Otherwise, I'm pretty happy with the result. We've gone from a smashed up monitor in a box rattling around to a working monitor with the help of some donations, with some help of some friends of the channel, and at least we have one working. And when we come to put that PC together in the next episode, it's going to, I'm pretty sure, take place in a lab that I'm building. Let me give you a sneaky peek. We've been furiously building walls, cladding walls, building desks. I'm just waiting for the rest of the furniture to arrive this week, and then you'll get a whole video on the build of the lab, so I'll show you a lot more of this. But we're going to have a dedicated space, so I'm not stood here on a slightly wobbly table trying to do all of this. We'll have a proper anti-static mats and all the tools to hand, just like we used to really in the old cave when I had that dedicated lab area. I'm really excited to get that back, both to get my hands dirty and fix a lot more things, and to bring you the videos about fixing them. So there's going to be a lot more of that as soon as we've got the lab built Look out for that soon. And as always, thank you for taking the time to watch. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. The Cave exists thanks to the kind support of the official cave dwellers at patreon.com/RMC Retro, where this month our newest members include Billy E. Lawrence III, Arla Soft, Mike Bell, Leonardo Scheider, Neil Kant, Neil Feltham, and Guybrush Loves Tesla. Thank you so much, guys, for your support, and if you like what I do, maybe you'd like to join them too. Patreon.com/RMC Retro. Thank you.